Well, guys, spinning honey. A little better setup than I had last year. If any of you remember that, it was a little hokey. I didn't have as many to spin. This year I had about 40 boxes with at least some honey on each frame in the box. So it was quite a bit more. So I borrowed Dave's 20 frame extractor, which is a hell of a lot quicker. And we've set up a few other things different. The problem I've got is I can't get that through this little narrow door here. So I can't do it in my heated back room. So I have to do it at night so the bees aren't out here trying to get my honey. And in here, Dave has this wax melter he picked up somewhere. It's got a heating element going into a water tank. There's a pot over here that you keep full of water, and the water goes out in here, gets hot, comes back through here. The thermostat regulates the temperature of the water, and then your cappings and honey drop right down in there. It warms it up, the honey runs out in the bucket, melted cappings run out on top, and you end up with a bucket of honey with a piece of wax on top. So it's kind of slick, takes care of your cappings all at the same time you're doing it. I went out back and found this old deep sink that was headed for the dump, bleached it all out and cleaned it up, mounted it on top, so when I cut my cappings off the frames, they sit here and drain a little bit. Then I pack them out and put them in the extractor. So I'll try to get shots of doing different parts of this process, and we'll put it all together. So I'm still doing it with the hot knife. I've got the temperature set just about right. It doesn't seem to get too hot and start smoking. I had a little of that last year. So it does a pretty good job of cutting the cappings off. And then Dave brought this little thing, so any place that didn't quite get hit, I can just rake it down and cut open the cap, and the honey will come out. Last year I was having to try to use the knife to do that on the stuff that was shallow, and it was a real pain. We've got this back room heated, so all this honey has stayed warm, so it'll come out better. While that machine is spinning, it takes it longer to get the honey out because it spins them sideways instead of flat, but you don't have to stop and turn them around either. So while it's out there spinning, doing its thing, I come in here and get the caps cut off a whole bunch more, so when it's done I'm ready to just reload it, and it goes pretty smooth. So I just have a paint strainer bag hanging off of the bung from the extractor, so it's straining it as it comes out to get all the wax particles and bugs and bug pieces and things that are in there out when it goes in the bucket. It'll go in my bottling tank and probably strain again when it goes back in there. So I could just pour it in the bottling tank and let all the wax and stuff float up and then filter it coming out, but this seemed like it worked. And for the most part, this machine stays in one place. Dave had a problem with it walking all over his shop. He's got a little slope to his shop. I picked it up and put some tires under it, some wheels, so that it could swivel a little more and bring itself back. Otherwise, when it starts to do this, it wants to walk. But with the wheels under it, it seems to be able to move and come back a little. It's walked its way, or worked its way right up against some things here and seems to stay all right. I haven't had a lot of trouble with it getting way out of balance. One or two loads did. But I just try to watch. If I've got a real light one, I try to make sure it's straight across from another light one and just kind of balance as best I can. But the frames are so erratic. You know, some are completely full and some have a half of one, and some have a little in the center, and then some has crystallized already, So it's never going to come to full balance if there's some that are crystallized and half the frame isn't going to come out. So I've been turning it on slow, getting it started slow, and bringing it up, just watching it, and for the most part it runs all right. So we're going to pull these frames out, these wet frames, and probably try to get up in the morning early and get them on some boxes. Then the bees can come right up and take it. I've left them set out and let them come rob it, and I will do some, but some of my colonies that need a little more feed on them, I'll just let them go ahead and take it right off their own head and put it away. So that's what I do with them. But there's quite a lot of honey still left on it, and the bees will get that and put it back in a frame somewhere and get it capped. So we'll get this thing unloaded and get ready to load the next round. All right, guys, I've got it loaded back up again. Wasn't a real good place to get a picture of that. So it's not real complicated. You just drop them in and they stand there on their ends, and then we'll start them spinning. So there's a wing nut here you can tighten down that starts putting tension on the belt, and then we'll watch it start spinning. We want to start her kind of slow, let it get up and going. So as that's picking up speed, since I'm out here in the shop where it's cooler and the honey's been warmed up, so it'll come out in that back room, but I put a hot plate up underneath of this. There's plenty of room, so it's helping to keep that warm, so it wants to come out and get filtered better, run through the filter. So go ahead and speed this thing up a little more. It'll start rocking and gyrating. The camera's going to pick it up, but there's you can see it starting to come out a little bit. See if we can get a few of the initial wobbles out and get it balanced a little better. Turn it down just a little bit. I hear guys talk about chaining these things down and lashing them hard and strapping them. Well, you've got a lot of motion going on in there because this is out of balance. If that energy doesn't have anywhere to go, it's going to go into the machine. And be hard on the machine. So I would rather have one be able to rock like this and move and put some of that energy down into the stand and gyrate a little bit and do its thing, as long as it's not jumping all over the place. So, and this crazy thing isn't level or anything else, and it still seems to be working good. So anyway, we'll let it run for a while. So back here in the back room, as I'm going through these frames, you know, not all of them are capped. So if you can see in here, the shiny, that's uncapped nectar. I tested some of it. Dave brought his tester kit over here so I can test the moisture. Some of it was up 28%. So that can really screw up your whole batch pretty quick if you've got it that high. Now I've tested some other that was at 19, and if I got a quarter of a frame that's at 19 and the rest is running 16, 17, it's not going to hurt the whole batch. But what I decided to do with these is, in the end, when I'm done with everything else, I'll extract this, test it, and I'm sure the moisture will be too high. But we know what the problem with high moisture in your honey is: it will ferment. So I'll just go ahead and roll with that, and that's what I'll use to make my mead, which I'm going to dilute down anyway and then ferment anyway. So I'll still get a chance to use it. And if you pull honey out like that, it's actually nectar, it's not honey yet, and it's at 28, 29, 30% moisture, it will take time for it to spoil. If you're going to eat that quick, you know, the next week or two, it's fine to eat it. Get it used up fresh. Sometimes you just got to get it out of the frames. So anyway, that's where we're at.